Hi everybody, I'm Sue Allen Clayton. Welcome to my channel where we're learning how to read tarot one card at a time. Today's video is an update from one I did about a month ago. I will link to that below so I won't go through all the details, but basically I decided to take a sabbatical and work on a bunch of things, some related to tarot and some not. And it's actually been 2 months. I had a month's worth of videos already ready to go when I decided to do this. So I'm going to share what I've done, what I've learned, a few readings, and some personal stuff. So if that interests you, stay tuned. So the first thing I decided to do was ditch my to-do lists. I have been a big to-do list maker my entire life since I was a really young girl. And I love to-do lists, right? Because they make me feel like I'm accomplishing things. They keep me busy. They keep me focused. But the purpose of the sabbatical was to really follow spirit. And you can't really do both of those things at once. So if I have things that I have to get done, I write it down, but it's not the 20-item to-do list that I was doing before. And I'm really just trying to figure out what should I do next. So sometimes it will be doing a card reading or watching a course, some tarot, some other interests. Or a lot of times I've noticed a book that's been on my bookshelf and I've just kind of lasered in on that and decided to give that a look. So it's been really interesting just to feel like I've been guided by spirit rather than guided by being busy. It's also been challenging. I really like structure. And so I've been so busy the last couple of years making all of these YouTube videos that I've always had something that I've been doing. And recently, I guess a couple of months ago, my mother-in-law, who lives in Canada, needed some emergency surgery. And so my husband's been up for the last few weeks helping her out. So he's also structure in my life because my daughter and I are the ones who work from home and he's the one who leaves the house. Between the trying to follow spirit and the lack of my husband being home, yeah, it's been different, but it's been good in some ways. My mother-in-law is doing much better, and hopefully my husband will be home this weekend. And it's been, we've been together, well, we've been married almost 40 years, and I don't think we've ever been apart more than a week. So this has been kind of an interesting experience. I have done a lot of quilting. That's something that I had put aside for the last couple of years, and I've finished multiple quilts. And I've been quilting and watching Chicago Med, if anybody knows that show. There are 10 seasons of it, and I really enjoyed the first two, but I feel like I'm committed through the end. So that's been one thing I've been up to. So tarot-wise, one decision I made was to quit reading reversals for now. If you followed me for a while, you know that I'm a big proponent of reversals. I think reversals have a really, I think reversals are important. However, trying to read intuitively, the issue is that it's just really hard to read cards when they're upside down. And the people that I have taken classes from and I have all queued up that I want to watch during my sabbatical, none of them read reversals. So I've put that aside for now. I will probably go back to it. Marcus Katz, who is one of my favorite teachers, he says that about a third of the people always read reversals, a third of the people never read reversals, and a third of the people do sometimes. And I think eventually I'll fall back into the sometimes category, but for right now, I have put that aside just in terms of learning how to read intuitively. Something else I've done is I've gone from my daily 3-card readings that had become 3 cards, usually on a spread, plus an underlying card. And I've now gone to 2-card readings, usually without a formal spread, and then the underlying card. And I have stopped using any other materials for my readings. So I've got a whole library of books. I've got a lot of notes. I'm using none of them. So I'm just reading the cards intuitively. When I do use a spread, it's basically something like, what message does Spirit have for me today? Would be the first card. The second card would be anything else. And the third card would be underlying issues, that kind of thing. One thing that I'm working on a lot is looking at the relationship between the cards and not reading from left to right, but looking at what card catches my eye, what part in the card catches my eye. Today I was looking at Temperance, and rather than the angel and the hands going back and forth in the cups, I actually realized that the bottom of the card was divided into two sections. So there are the irises on the right side, and then there's this whole path on the left side, and it goes into mountains, and it's like this whole journey. So what path do you take? Do you take like the beautiful flowers, or do you take what's kind of in behind you? So that the path caught my eye today. And so I did the whole reading based on that and what's the path. So I'm not starting like from left to right. I'm not starting with the biggest things on the cards. I'm really looking at what catches my eye and what brings those cards together, whether it's water or expressions or whatever it is. So it's been a very different way to read the cards for me. I wanted to share a couple of readings that I did where I sensed an association between the cards that I hadn't noticed before. And I thought these were really brilliant. You may think otherwise, but anyway, I wanted to share them. And you can see both of the readings here. The reading on the left, I had asked what Spirit wanted me to know today. And Spirit's direct message was the Four of Cups, and the underlying message was the Queen of Cups. And I made the connection that the Four of Cups Spirit was handing me was something I didn't want to see. And then that transitioned to be the same cup that I was looking at when I was the Queen. And I could actually see my growth, right? That I didn't want to accept this gift, and then I had embraced the gift as I became the Queen. And the other reading had to do with a personal financial issue. And I'm not going to go into details, but the first card was the Four of Pentacles, and the final card was the King of Pentacles. And I could actually see that I would be able to transition from the fear-based, almost hoarding person on the left to the person that felt abundance and that I had enough on the right. And both of those readings were really exciting for me because I was realizing that I was better able to make connections within the cards and actually make them in a very personal way. It's also been interesting because one of the courses I'm taking is from Katz, and it's called The Spiritual Key to the Tarot. And he has a book coming out soon by the same name, which I'm dying to get, and I can't give you the link, but I'll write the name down in the bottom if you want to look it up after this video is done. But he's a big tarot researcher, and he and Tali Goodwin have spent 10 years looking at what A.E. Waite was thinking when he created the Waite-Smith Tarot deck. And it's so deep in history and spiritualism and Christianity and symbolism. It's one of those, like, he's such a great teacher and the material is so great, but it's one of those experiences where I look at this and think, my God, I know nothing. Like, I just know nothing. So I'm in this really interesting place where part of the time I'm taking this really super deep dive into the tarot. And then the other part of the time, I'm just making crap up by looking at doing this intuitively. So it's an interesting place to be. And I give myself credit that I'm kind of open to both things. I believe with the tarot, there's space for everything. There's really a place for knowing the cards, there's a place for intuitive reading, and there's a place for knowing the history. So it's just kind of all coming together for me. And it's really great to have a space that I've been able to do that. So, one example of reading the cards intuitively is temperance. And I know I mentioned that just a minute ago, but I've been trying to challenge myself with readings. And last weekend, the battery in my car stopped working, and I needed to have AAA come and give me a tow. It was a new battery. I just got it in July. They restarted it. The guy from AAA told me that I needed a new battery. It was shot, it was corroded. I drove to Goodyear, which is where I bought the battery originally. The tech looked at it and he's like, "You don't need a new battery. It's fine. You left the lights on." Well, the lights turn off in my car automatically. I know I didn't do that. And it was like they refused to sell me a battery because they said my battery was fine. And my cynical self is thinking because they don't want to have to pay for one because it would be fully warranted. But anyway, they refused to give me a battery. I came home. I'm all stressed because I'm afraid my car won't start when I need it. So anyway, I decided I was going to do a tarot reading about whether I needed a new battery. And one of the cards that came up was Temperance. So I looked at this card totally intuitively, and I saw a lot of places where we could see power, like around her head, right? She has the not really a halo, but it's like shining around her head, and an aura, I guess you would call it. Then there's the crown, and it has an aura around it, and there just seemed to be all this light emanating from the Temperance card. And the other thing she had on her chest looks like hazard lights, right? So I took this all together to mean power, that there actually was power in my vehicle, and something had happened, but it was going to be okay. The battery really was fine. That's one example of how I've been using tarot to look at things intuitively. So before we continue, if you want to support this channel and to see these videos as they come out, please subscribe. It will mean that you won't miss anything, and it will also help me to grow this channel. So I would appreciate that. So here's another example of a 3-card reading that I did. My dog has gotten sick, and that's been one of the things I've been dealing with over this last few weeks. She is a 9-year-old mini dachshund. She was a rescue, and she's been pretty healthy until recently. And all this really weird stuff started happening to her. I've had her at the vet numerous times. And it started off that they thought she had crystals in her urine, and I changed her diet, and she wasn't getting better. And then she had a bunch of blood tests, and her red blood cells were super high. And then they did all these tests, and they thought it was her spleen, and they thought she might have cancer. And it basically came out that they didn't know what was wrong with her. So, of course, when she was going in to have all these tests, I decided to do a tarot reading to see what would happen. So this is the reading. And the question was, what will be the results of her test today? So I wrote down 3 questions that I wanted answered. Question number 1 was, how will she do? And the card that I pulled was the 8 of Swords. And I believe that this showed my dog in her cage. And she felt powerless. She was scared. She was being poked and prodded. She was like just unsure of what was going to happen. And question number 2 was, how will I do? And I got the 9 of Wands. And my reading of this was that I will feel beaten up. I'm trying to hold it together. I'm trying to pretend things are okay. and also that we're almost at the end of the testing phase for her. So if this doesn't show anything, then we're just going to call it quits with the testing and just deal. And then number 3 was, how will the vet fare today? And this shows the vet as the 7 of Pentacles, and she's really working hard to come up with some kind of a solution. And then the underlying message was the Emperor, and that's that I was really trying to be rational. I was trying to hold things together. I was trying not to break down until I had all the facts. And all that was really true. My dog was super stressed while she was there. The vet worked really hard to find a solution. She contacted another vet who was an internal medicine specialist. The specialist vet looked at all the images and all the blood work and everything, and really they didn't come up with very much. They had a lot of expensive tests that I could do, and honestly, I looked up what the solution would be given the results. So if she had cancer, if she had a mass in her pituitary gland, and really it would, I just was not going to do any of those things. So I was really stoic. I tried to get all the facts, and then I'm kind of being like the Emperor. It's okay, I'm just going to watch and wait. We'll deal with it if however I need to deal with it. So that was that reading. So there's a final reading I want to share with you, and it's about what I needed to focus on today. And I had a whole list of things: quilting, reading, tarot, there were a lot of things. And before I show you the reading, I need to explain something because otherwise it won't make any sense. So one of the things that I've been working on this last couple of months is internal family systems. And this may be something that's unfamiliar to you, so I'm going to give you a bit of an explanation, and then I'll share some resources if you want to look at it further. But internal family systems was created by a psychologist named Dick Schwartz about 40 years ago. And basically what it says is, rather than, and this is according to Sue, okay, so I don't think anyone in the IFS world will really love this explanation, but basically what he says is we all don't have one mind. We all have all of these parts within us, and these parts are often disagreeing. So for example, I do really badly when I eat salt at night. I have restless leg syndrome, which is kind of a nightmare, and I normally manage it. But if I eat salt, my legs just go crazy, and I'm so uncomfortable, and I have to take medication, and half the time that doesn't help. But I also really like potato chips, and that's kind of my treat and my comfort food. So part of me really, really wants potato chips and often gives in, and part of me knows that it's really bad for my restless leg syndrome and I shouldn't be eating it. So that's kind of an example of two parts of you that are at war, and we all have these, right? New Year's Day, you decide you're not going to drink anymore, and that there's a part of you that does all this research and makes all these agreements, and then there's a part of you that's like, screw it, I want something to drink. So we all have that, right? And it's not the same as like multiple personalities. Where they don't talk to each other and you don't realize you have them. We just we know we all have these, and it's just a part of us. So there's 3 kinds of parts, and one of them is called exiles. And this is a part of you that gets kind of locked away because it's really, really painful for you. Let's say, for example, you had dyslexia as a kid, but you didn't know it. And, people my age, they didn't know that, right? It was just, you were just stupid. You couldn't read. And so you have all these experiences of being at school and feeling stupid because you couldn't read, and the teacher telling you that you weren't trying, and your classmates laughing at you. And, that poor 6-year-old kid, right, was just so ashamed and scared and confused. So that would be an exile, because what would happen is you would just put that part of you away and not even recognize that it was there. It was almost like it was buried. And then to keep from getting hurt, your brain has a couple of parts that make sure that keeps away so you're not hurt. And these parts are trying to help you. And one of those parts is called a manager. And the manager just does everything in its power to keep those parts away. So, for example, the manager might tell you that you're not going to get a job that has anything to do with reading. You're going to work with your hands, right? You're going to become a seamstress or maybe a hairdresser. And so the manager really tries to steer you away from a job that will require that you read and steer you towards something that doesn't require a lot of reading. It would steer you towards watching TV in the evening rather than reading a book or listening to audiobooks. So that's kind of what a manager does. That's a really short explanation, but you need it in order to understand my reading. So here's the reading. So my question was, what should I focus on today? And I had a whole list of choices: exercise, cooking, cleaning, quilting, tarot classes, working on our basement. There were all sorts of things. And this was my reading. Card number 1 was Spirit's direct message, and that was the 7 of Cups. Spirit's further message was the 5 of Swords, and the underlying message was the 5 of Wands. As you can see, these cards were all about choices and conflict. And I realized that the 7 of Cups showed that there were many different parts of me that I needed to discover. And the 5 of Swords was about exiles and the fact that it was time for me to do some healing and bring these parts together. And the 5 of Wands showed how these parts were fighting with each other. So I have to say, I was just blown away by this reading, right? So the message was I needed to spend some time working on internal family systems, but the idea that, the cards just were that dead on, it just blows me away. And none of these readings, these are all intuitive meanings, right? None of these meanings would be in a book. So there's such a place for using intuitive readings. Something else I wanted to mention was, and a big change for me, is I'm actually picking up the cards when I'm looking at them intuitively. So when I've been doing my readings in the past, I've just laid them out on the table and I look at them laid out. I've never really picked them up. And so in the past couple of months, I've really been picking up the cards. I've been holding them in front of my face. I've been looking at them super carefully. And I think that's allowed me to connect more deeply with the cards rather than them just sort of laying on a table and me not touching them. So that's something else that I started doing and I feel like has made a really big difference. The final thing I wanted to share was YouTube Shorts. In the last video, I had said that I plan to continue doing YouTube Shorts. Well, YouTube Shorts have been a technical nightmare for me. I tried several different programs. It was just awful. And in terms of following along with what Spirit is trying to tell me to do, I realized that I didn't need to be making YouTube Shorts. So I have not been, and I really want to get back to them, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. That's it for now. I really appreciate everybody who's checked in on me and has really showed me that they cared and wondered how I'm doing. And now you know it all for yourself. And I hope that you learned something and that you'll keep watching and following along with the world according to Sue and Tarot. So thanks for checking in, and I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.